Hey folks, Deano here again. This time we're taking a look at Kefla from Dragonball Super. Yep, yet another figure that's taken forever to get here. I don't know why I bother. But yeah, this girl, I should say, she's decent, but I do feel Tamashii dropped the ball a little bit for certain parts. So yeah, first things first, let's take a look at the packaging. So you've got the Tamashii seal of quality, Bandai Spirits, made in Vietnam. Sorry, it's designed by Tamashii Nations in Japan. Dragon Ball Super. That's the web exclusive logo. I haven't seen that in a wee while. Tamashii Nations Bandai, ages 15 and up. And a nice picture of her on the front, which actually looks better than she does in hand. Some pictures on the side, and some at the back, just with the usual blurb. You'll see it's been distributed by Hio in the EU. And yeah, just the normal sort of Figuarts packaging these days. So yeah, bring her in, set her to the side. So she comes with a decent amount of accessories. She's missing a stand, which, considering her hair, she could probably be doing with, but yeah, Tamashii doesn't like giving out stands these days. First thing first, she comes with her main attack, the one that she does against Ultra Instinct Goku, and he sort of slides over the top of it. They're very well done. The hands are permanently glued to the transparent plastic. Kind of hard plastic, so I'd be a bit wary of them breaking. But yeah, overall they do a decent job. They're not too heavy, but considering the problems that we're going to get into in a minute, she might have a little bit of trouble holding them up. But yeah, in terms of faces, she comes with the smirking face that's on her. Now you will notice as well, I don't know why Tamashii have started doing this sort of Figma style for faces, where they're quite flat and they sort of tampograph on the details, which comes across okay if they're facing you head on, but apart from that, they do look really flat. So for example, this does look really good. Then you look to the side a little bit, and all of a sudden half of her face just disappears because there's no depth to the faces. It's even worse on the yelling face. Like I said, they look really good face on, but the minute you put them to the side a little bit, they lose their depth. I noticed it on the Full Power Super Saiyan Goku as well, where they sort of just made it more curved, but there was no detail in the actual face. It was all printed on. But yeah, they are decent, don't get me wrong, but I wish they would go back to the way they used to do it. In terms of accessories and hands and things like that, she comes with a pair of crossed arms, which suits Kefla. Weirdly enough, they've actually put the copyright and trademarks inside the arms, probably because the feet in that were too small. She comes with a pair of open palm blasting hands, a pair of sort of grippy hands. She comes with a almost sort of clenched hand Probably for her, tell someone to come at her. She got a pointing finger hand. Again, Kefla is very brash, so those do suit her quite well. And she comes with a little key ball effect, which is the same style as the rest of the new figures that have been coming out, where it's just a peg on a separate key blast sort of hand, and that pegs in. So yeah, I do have a correction to make from a previous video. I said that these were all being made the same, but they're not. For some reason, the tolerances on these pegs are all different, which makes no sense considering they're the exact same design. So, for example, this is Android 18's little key ball, and it's way too loose. I mean, it does sit in there, at least it's not too tight, but yeah, it's going to fall off if it's not being held up the way. Same goes for Super Saiyan 4 Goku's Kamehameha effect. It's way too loose. And I have checked against the other figures as well. They really don't fit that well interchangeably, which is a real massive oversight from Tamashii, I would say, considering the fact that it's literally a peg. Like, it would not take much for them to make sure that's the same across all figures. Hell, if they'd done it right, they could reuse the same effect multiple times. Because as you can see, this is a different key blast effect altogether. If they had any brains, they'd just be reusing the same mould. But they didn't, and it says a massive shame that they didn't think of tolerances when they done it. So yeah, moving on to the figure, there are a few issues that I need to address. First off is not her overall scale, but more the size of her body in proportion to her head. Now, if you check most reference images on Google, Kefla's face is more normal in proportion to the rest of her body, but on this figure, she comes across almost like a kid because of how big the face is. I mean, let's bring in Goku, for example. I would say she is also a little bit too small, just in general. She should probably be coming up to, I'd say her chin should be reaching Goku's bicep. But yeah, it makes her look strange. I don't know how else to describe it. Especially if you check the fighters promotional art, she's a lot bigger, she's a lot bulkier compared to what we got here. I mean, the only muscle definition we see is in her abs, which is decent, but she should have bigger leg muscles, she should have bigger biceps. It doesn't make much sense. It feels as if Tamashii sort of rushed through this. Just noticed that on her backside. I think that's a moulding issue. But yeah, she does look okay, but because of the weird proportions, her arms just look tiny in proportion to the rest of her body. And now that I've mentioned that, probably everyone is going to hate me. But yeah, in terms of the faces as well, you can see it's not too bad on the smirking face, which can look away, but in terms of like right there, the illusion is broken because you can clearly see that her eyes are not deeper into her face. It's flat. Same with the bangs. I don't know why the bangs are almost tucked into her ears when they really shouldn't be. They should be hanging out like Trunks or Broly's. I mean, she literally is a female fusion of a female Broly. But yeah, if we take that off, you can actually see how it goes on. It's just a big ball peg. And yeah, she does look a bit top heavy, but as long as you don't put her into too dynamic a pose, she sort of stands quite well. But yeah, only other issue I have come across is out of the package, it was sort of scuffed on her leg, and this arm pretty much just falls off. That one's a bit better, but you can actually see the pegs are different sizes. Seems deliberate so that you can put on the crossed arms, which I will show just before we go into articulation, but it looks really good with the crossed arms. It looks a lot better than just the base hands. I'm not sure if they made it different sizes to make it easier to put the crossed arms on, but I still have a bit of trouble putting it on. Give me 2 seconds. And just like that, there we go. The trick is to put the thicker peg in first, and then the smaller one will just sort of slide into position. And yeah, she looks really good like that. If I do decide to keep this figure, it's genuinely the first figure I'm considering immediately selling on, because there's quite a lot wrong with it, including mold lines and stitch. But yeah, that does make her look a lot better because there's actual definition to the arms on the crossed arms. But yeah, let's take that back off. And there we go. So yeah, in terms of articulation, she looks up really well. She looks down really well also. One other issue. I know I keep bringing them up. If you check her neck, it's actually folded over the tank top as opposed to under it. You can see the lip there, that should be underneath. But yeah, she has no actual bicep swivel, uses the peg at the shoulder to move, a single joint at the elbow, standard ball peg at the wrist. She has double ball peg at the abs and one at the waist, so she can look down fairly well, go back so much so that she breaks her back. This is a floating piece, totally floating, which is strange. She doesn't have 2.0 articulation. As far as I can tell, she doesn't even have 1.0. These are just sort of ball pegs. Just a T-joint ball peg. It gets the job done, I suppose. She can kick out about that far without it scraping against this solid hard plastic piece, which will scrape against this plastic. There we go. I actually just did it there and I was trying not to. Single joint at the knee, which honestly looks horrendous. Like, you push it too much and there's massive gap. So keep it at the single joint instead of double. A ball peg, or ball joint, sorry, at the ankle. She can get some good ankle pivot. She can go up that far. forward that far, and some toe articulation. Always nice to see. But yeah, guys. Oh, and she also has butterflies, which don't really do much. Still can't get past her chest. But yeah, overall, I feel as though this figure was sort of rushed out the door by Tamashii. If I remember correctly, this was a figure that won a sort of public poll for who they wanted to see as one of the next figures, which is sort of why, like, while they're currently doing the Namek saga and things like that, randomly they released Kefla. So it does make sense. And yeah, it feels as if they've clearly just reused the body from the Dragonball girls, like Bulma and Launch, to make her. Not really thinking about the scale and the body mass that Kefla should have, which is, it's a shame. It really is. For the price, if you like Kefla, which admittedly I do, I think she's a bit of a badass, kind of worth it. But yeah, Tamashii did drop the ball a little bit. So yeah, guys, that'll do it for this review. I'll see y'all later.